While listening to that interview with the Justice Secretary was Dame Nicole Jacobs, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for England and Wales, who joins us now. What's your reaction to the interview with the Justice Secretary?
I have concern that we are not taking seriously the risks that these changes pose to victims. I think there are some mitigations that she's talked about. I really appreciate that, but we should expect that of any government who is making changes which put victims in harm's way. So there's a whole raft of issues that will feel quite unjust to victims. And I just want to talk really highlight what you were mentioning earlier about how different the relationship is with victims of domestic abuse to their offender. And we have to make sure that in every way we appreciate what that change, that difference really is. And I'm worried about the timescales of all of this. I'm worried about the risk assessment that takes place. How much are we definitely going to mitigate the risks as opposed to kind of talk around or skirt around the issues?
Yeah, because the thing that strikes me is, as you say, like domestic abuse victims and their perpetrators, as you say, have a different relationship. It's a personal relationship. They know where they live, they know where their kids go to school, they know where they work, they know their habits, they know what they like to do at the weekend, right? What I guess the Justice Secretary would say is that's why we're going to increase the tagging, we're going to use technology to try and keep tabs on people. Do you think that's enough?
What we know now is that when we have perpetrators of domestic abuse who have orders, they often breach those orders. Very little enforcement of those orders. There's many, many ways that we can see that we already let victims down. So I'm not convinced by those reassurances. We have to make sure that if we're going to institute these kind of sweeping changes, that we put victims first in all of this.
Do you think that's happening now then? No.
I'm not convinced, partly because I know that some of these changes will come in way before those kind of increases to probation will really be implemented or be real. And what that means in actuality is sooner than later, we will be allowing, for example, offenders who have been released on license, breached those license conditions, instead of coming back to prison as they would now for the rest of their sentence as a result of those breaches, it will only be 28 days. Well, that's right around the corner. So where is the mitigation and the communication to victims about the fact that's even happening? How do victims react to that very short recall? How will they know about it? How will they plan their lives in and around it? There's a lot of concern in the way that we're implementing this. I do believe that there's every intention to try to mitigate some of these risks, and there's some things announced in this raft of measures that are really welcome, but it really is not going far enough. It feels like victims are paying the price for the prison overcrowding, and that, as you've said earlier, there are choices to be made. Are we making the right choices in spending review, in all of the government plans about what kind of support is being put in place for victims? I know, as the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, that many support services for victims are absolutely on their knees right now. Really, very, very long waiting lists, very huge pressures on them, and let alone the pressures on probation. So we have a lot of problems to fix to get this right.
The government says there's an emergency, a national emergency, when it comes to violence against women and girls. They've got a target to try and halve it. Do you think this is at odds with that? These reforms really, truly are at odds with that, aren't they? Because they send a message to victims that their safety isn't being prioritized over the concerns of the system that's in place, the prison overcrowding. It does put victims at risk if they don't know if someone's being released, if we haven't put the genuine resource in place for some of these things. For community-based sentences, what happens if there's a breach of the conditions? Is there going to be that swift action that we would all fully expect? For the recall measures, again,
they're coming in so quickly. How do we assure victims in all of this that this is going to be dealt with, that their safety will be prioritized? I'm really concerned about all of that, and that absolutely flies in the face of a wonderful ambition that this government has in terms of having domestic abuse, sexual violence, stalking in a decade. We want the police to do better. We want them to be more proactive. Well, that means we'd have more people coming to court, and there is a conflict there, an obvious one.
Thank you very much indeed. It was great to talk to you today.